Hello everybody. The video I'm going to make today is not actually one that I planned to do for this week, but as I'm filming this, yesterday was World Mental Health Awareness Day, so I just thought it's fitting, it's relevant. I kind of realised that I've spoken quite openly about my experience with my first relapse with aggressive onset multiple sclerosis in terms of what happened to me physically, but I haven't addressed the mental side of things, so I'm gonna talk about it in this video. Just as a disclaimer, I'm going to be talking about depression and anxiety in this video, so these two topics are things that might trigger you. Please don't watch this video. But that being said, two common symptoms of MS are depression and anxiety. And these two things I have experienced in the past year. So I'm going to talk about it. Everything happened for me mentally when I went into hospital, as is probably not going to come as a shock to some people. I went into hospital for 6 weeks. It was quite a traumatic time for me. If you want to know more about that and what happened to me, I will leave a link down below to my first video where I sort of look at my hands, where I talk about literally everything that happened. But long story short, I went to bed completely symptomless, diseaseless, woke up and I had aggressive MS, which was great. I went to hospital, and throughout my whole entire stay of 6 weeks, I did not meet another patient who was under the age of 60. And as a 22-year-old, 22 to 60 is a huge age gap. That's way older than even my own parents. So it was kind of horrible. It was kind of the feeling like, this is not meant to be happening to me at this time. I am not meant to be in hospital. Why is this happening to me? This shouldn't be happening to me. This is really unfair. Why is this happening to me? Thoughts like that just going round and round and round and round in my head. Also, it wasn't a very nice environment to be in the first hospital I was at, because on the wards I didn't get much sleep. A lot of the women were quite confused and distressed, and so it was loud. It was not a very nice place to be because it was quite horrible listening to people scream for help all through the night. Within a couple of days of being in hospital, I was paralysed, so I couldn't just pop to the toilet. I remember on the first night I could just about walk to the toilet, which was good. I had a little bit of independence, and that was the last time I would have independence for 6 weeks. So I couldn't move, I couldn't wash myself, I couldn't dress myself, I couldn't get to the toilet, and so I had nowhere to really just run away and just be by myself, because I just wanted that privacy and that private space to myself. Didn't want to be on the ward all the time being watched, and it was just not that great. And I remember definitely at the start, the only time I would have a minute to myself was after the nurses had taken me to the toilet, put me on the toilet and then shut the door. And every time they did that, I just cried like so much. And I just remember like sitting on the toilet and looking around this hospital toilet and just looking like at my leg, which wasn't working, and my hand, which was like in a fist and tight to my body, and I couldn't move it. And I would just be crying, and I'd be thinking, how did I get here? How did this happen? Why is this happening? I can't believe that I'm here. My mental health started kind of declining because I couldn't just walk around. I was in my bed for 24 hours a day, apart from about 30 minutes to 45 minutes where I would get some kind of physiotherapy. But other than that, I was stuck in my bed, in a ward, and the whole situation, because you can't think of anything else, just seems so much worse. I mean, it was awful, the situation, but when all you can think about is how awful it is, you go a little bit like crackers. And I definitely started to lose myself a little bit. But those 3 weeks, the first 3 weeks, were so much better than the next 3 weeks. After 3 weeks, I got moved to this hospital that was described to me as this amazing rehabilitation hospital where they're really going to push me and it's going to be the best place for me to be. And oh wow, it's so amazing. Like, they're going to fix you up so quickly. Because the only reason I was in hospital after 2 weeks, well, I was on steroids, really strong steroids for 2 weeks. And the steroids made me feel really sick and gave me like a metallic taste in my mouth. But after I was on the steroids, I wasn't on any medication or anything. So the only reason I was in hospital was to have physiotherapy to get the messages from my brain back to my arm and to my leg and get me moving again. So this intensive rehabilitation hospital sounded like amazing because I needed all the physio I could get, and this was going to be just this amazing place, and it was just going to be the final push and I would get home. And oh my God, how wrong I was. Like, the second hospital was just the worst place that I could ever have been put, I think. It was so painful, and it was really painful for me to think about those 3 weeks because they really were horrible and I completely lost myself. But anyway, so first of all, got to that hospital and I was assigned my own personal wheelchair, which this wheelchair followed me around everywhere, like taunting me. Like, I would wake up in the morning, it would be next to my bed. I would go to the toilet, the wheelchair would come with me. I would go have a physio session, the wheelchair would be there. I would go and have a shower, the wheelchair would be there. But like, the wheelchair was following me and I was just thinking, get that wheelchair away from me. I don't want to see it. Get it away. But it was there, like, laughing at me. So that was the first thing. I was like, great, I have a wheelchair with my name written on it. Like, cool. The next thing was, this amazing rehabilitation place was basically a residential care home kind of place. Everyone was way older in this place, and it was a neuro rehab unit, so there were some people who were in quite a bad state, and then there was me, a very delicate 22-year-old girl, terrified. So yeah, I stuck out like a sore thumb. Another thing in this hospital was they made everyone all sit together, all around tables, and as everyone was way older than me, I stuck out like a sore thumb and I just hated going to eat. Number one, the food was rank, and number two, everyone would just watch me because everyone would come in one by one with a nurse on various sort of equipments, some in electric wheelchairs, some in wheelchairs, some walking with sticks, some walking with frames, and so everyone would just come in one by one, get sat down, and I used to hate it so much, just walking in, and everyone would just be looking at me, and it really, I can't even talk about it because it was just, I found it so stressful, and like my heart is actually racing talking about this. But yeah, I just felt like everyone was watching me and I didn't want to be watched. Oh, and another thing was the 2 weeks worth of really strong steroids. At this point, my body was starting to clear that out of my system, and it brought me out in the most hideous spots all over my face. And I am not exaggerating, but literally every single pore on my face was a spot. It looked like a rash, especially on my cheeks, all over my face. These massive red and white horrible spots. And it was also August or early September at this point, and it was so hot in England, and I just remember it just constantly being hot and constantly just feeling gross. I had spots all over my face. I couldn't wash myself. I couldn't wash my face. My hands didn't work because it affected both of my hands. And this is really gross, but I couldn't even like use my fingers, so I couldn't like pop a spot, and it was just really like stressful. And you know, when you just feel gross and you feel like everyone's just looking at you, and it's just, whoo, it just wasn't great. Just wasn't great. I'm surprised I even ate any food because I was in such a high stress every time I went to eat. The hospital was so awful. I found myself just staring at the walls, and I became obsessed with how much I hated it, and I became consumed about how awful this place was for me, that I disappeared from myself, which sounds really weird, but I went so deep, like within myself. I lost myself. Like my personality was gone because I just found the whole thing so awful. And my parents, when they used to come and visit me, some days they said that they couldn't even get to me during the visiting hours. Like they couldn't find me because I'd gone so far into myself that I wasn't there anymore. I felt in my head that my head was like a kettle that was boiling and whistling. Felt like I was screaming in my head, and I was just screaming, help me, like, why is no one helping me? The only reason I was in that hospital was to get physio because I needed to learn how to walk again, and I found it so stressful because no one was giving me that physio, and how am I meant to teach myself how to walk again if no one gave me the physio? So I felt like I was just screaming in my head, like, please, can someone help me? I am willing to do physio all day, because the hospital was only used to older patients. They weren't catered for a young person who had energy, who had muscles. So I just don't think they knew really what to do with me, and it was so frustrating because I would just stare out of the window when I was in my bed every day. There was this garden with a fence at the end of it, and I just used to stare outside and just imagine myself legging it across the garden, like catapulting myself out over the fence, and just keep running and running and running and getting away from this hospital and running and never coming back. But, you know, couldn't even walk at this stage. This was really where my sort of mental health started going a bit downhill. They assigned me a psychologist at this hospital, but the psychologist was kind of focused on... My camera just cut out. So, got up to the psychologist. Oh my god. The psychologist was just basically like, how are you going to feel if you get a diagnosis? And I just didn't want to hear it. I just wanted to focus on, at this point, I was still only diagnosed with clinically isolated syndrome. So I was like, don't diagnose me before I get diagnosed, please. So I just kind of ignored it. Also, what happened in that hospital is there were people who had MS, and they got wind of me being in there for clinically isolated syndrome. So bless them all, like all the patients there were so lovely, but they all wanted to come and chat to me. Yeah, and they would just ask me loads of questions like, are you on this medication, or do you experience these symptoms? And at this point I was still only clinically isolated syndrome, so I didn't know what to say. So anyway, that hospital was horrible, and I really lost myself there. And yeah. Then I got diagnosed with MS the day I got out of hospital, and cried for a whole day until I just thought, oh god, like I'm so sick of feeling like this. I've had 6 weeks of feeling like this, like I don't want to be upset anymore. So I just put my fingers in my ears and I went, la 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 la, I'm not listening to you, mental health. I just want to go and live my life now, and I don't want to deal with anything else. And I have been doing this la 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 la, fingers in my ears, ignoring my mental health, until about June time, I'm gonna say. In May, I went on holiday with my family for 2 weeks, and up until May, I had done a very good job at distracting myself and getting my mental health out of my brain. But then we went on holiday for 2 weeks, and all of my sort of day-to-day distractions got taken away from me, and all of the stuff that I'd been suppressing and ignoring came towards the front of my brain. And I had a lot of intrusive thoughts. I sort of woke up and realised, oh, I'm not meant to be, I don't want to be feeling like this, and I'm not meant to be feeling like this. I spiraled down into depression during those 2 weeks on holiday, which is crazy because it was an amazing holiday, but I let in all the stuff that I had been pushing out with all of my might for the past kind of half a year into my brain, and I lost interest in things. I couldn't be, not that I couldn't be bothered to get out of bed, I just couldn't get out of bed. I was in such a low mood, I didn't want to do anything, I wasn't sleeping, my anxiety was through the roof. For a whole year up until this point, I have anxiety every single day constantly, which is generalised anxiety disorder. What the anxiety is triggered by is the fear of waking up and having another attack, because that's what happened to me in my first attack, and I'm terrified of that happening again. And when I say the anxiety has been constant for a year, I mean it has literally been constant. I constantly feel like something terrible is going to happen. I constantly feel like I'm in the fight or flight response. I'm very on edge. I feel as though my heart is racing when it's not. I feel so full of adrenaline all the time and just stressed. And I go around in vicious cycles because I feel anxious, I feel stressed. I then get stressed because I'm feeling stressed, because stress can trigger attacks, which makes me more stressed. And then I think I need to calm down because I'm going to have another attack. I get more and more and more stressed and more panicked, and I can't calm myself down. And I just think, oh my God, I'm going to cause myself another attack because I feel so stressed, and my heart is racing and I'm sweating, and I'm literally, something terrible is going to happen. I'm going to have another attack. So I'm in a vicious cycle like that, basically. The sort of depression, low mood is a lot better now. The anxiety is not any better. Have had some cognitive behavioural therapy, but that's sort of just focused on how to how to cope with the anxiety, but it hasn't actually stopped it, and I feel that it hasn't actually helped me, because I know that what I really need to do is talk about what happened to me in hospital, but I haven't felt ready to do that yet. But it has been over a year of feeling like this, and I'm tired of feeling like it, so I know that that's something that I need to do. But I think the focus for me now is I've got myself physically to as good a place as I think I can get and recover from the first attack. So my focus now needs to be my mental health and sorting it out. I have tried cognitive behavioural therapy, and that didn't work because it was quite a broad kind of just dealing with anxiety as a whole, but I think I need to deal with my anxiety in terms of having another attack, in terms of talking about what happened to me in hospital, in terms of having MS. I've also tried antidepressants. I'm actually on antidepressants at the moment for my anxiety. The dosage has been upped once, but it hasn't worked. I just wanted a kind of break in my brain, you know? In hospital, my brain was in overdrive. I got out of hospital, I got diagnosed. And when I got diagnosed, I then got a date. I had to choose a medication to be on. Then I got a date for my treatment. It was over Christmas. It was the worst possible date I could have had. So from August until December, I had a lot to think about and a lot whirring around in my brain. The steroids with the treatment that I had in December gave me really, really bad insomnia, so that made things worse. But yeah, I don't really feel like I've explained myself very well in this video, but basically I have experienced depression and anxiety due to my multiple sclerosis, as I'm sure loads of people have. The anxiety is worse because it's constant. When I go through, like at my worst, I had a sort of depression scale, and I scored moderate to severe for low mood, and I scored severe for anxiety. So things were pretty bad. I did go into a sort of dark place and had this sort of dark cloud over me, but the dark cloud has lifted now and I'm just sort of left with this constant anxiety. It was World Mental Health Awareness Day, and please look after your mental health. I'm going to be exploring into ways where I can help my mental health, so keep an eye out for that. So thanks for watching this video. I'll do another video next week.